Okay, there's no time like the present. It's Wednesday night. It's 8:30. It's a little after 8:30, and we might as well get it fired up here. The Panther-Lair Show, Wednesday night show, 8:30 on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That's our YouTube channel. We get together every week for our weekly show. Just talk about whatever's going on. Of course, we have the Saturday reaction show, the post-game reaction show, which is always lively and interesting and exciting. A lot of fun to get together after the game and talk about the game. It's like the old, and I shouldn't say the old, I think they still do this. I don't know if they do it for Pitt, but I mean, obviously you can hear post-game call-in shows for the Steelers and I think lots of college and pro teams around the country. And it's kind of like that, where it's almost like a group therapy session. And we just sit here for, on this show, we sit here for an hour. I've heard some post-game shows that go for a couple hours, and we all just kind of, I shouldn't say therapy because you do it, it's after wins too, but certainly after this past week, I think there was some good therapy going on, people sharing in their misery in the aftermath. Of course, the difference of those post-game shows, those call-in shows, they have commercial breaks. We just plowed through a straight hour right here on the Panther-Lair post-game. So, that was exciting. That was fun after the game. I mean, I think it was probably the most enjoyable thing that any of us did on Saturday. I don't know what you did with your family. Maybe you did something more fun than that. But, I mean, sitting there for an hour and just kind of reveling in the loss to Western Michigan was one of the highlights of the day, for me at least. Just kind of hearing what you guys think. Although, I think at this point, I know the Pitt fan base pretty well. I kind of know what you guys are going to say. I think walking out of Homefield, I knew what the reaction was going to be. I don't think there were any doubts or question marks about that one. So we're here for the weekly show, though, our midweek show, where we just kind of collect our thoughts in hopefully a more organized fashion. Although I don't know if that's always the case, but we get together and talk a little Pitt sports. Of course, I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You should know that website by now, Panther-Lair.com. Somebody told me that I should introduce the show or introduce myself and the website a little bit better than I do, so I have been trying to do that. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com is the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards, which have been lively in the last week. Cripes, Lemon, it's only Wednesday. It's been 4 days since the Western Michigan game, and the message boards have certainly been lively and not always in the way that you would like them to, but at least some people are trying to have fun. I'm trying to have fun, try and bring the jokes every now and then. But look, you're a Pitt fan. You're feeling pretty down right now. You're not feeling real great about your favorite team because they just lost to Western Michigan at home and blew their chances at their first perfect non-conference record ever. You're not feeling very good about that. The one thing you can do is sort of share in your misery with other Pitt fans, and the best place to do that is the Panther-Lair.com message boards. Go hang out at Panther-Lair.com. There are posts being made 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's not an exaggeration. You'll find it all day, every day at Panther-Lair.com. You'll go to bed tonight. You'll read the board before you go to bed. You'll wake up in the morning. There'll be new posts, new threads, new replies. It's active like that. It's the best place online for Pitt fans to get together. I really believe that. And you should check it out. If you're a Pitt fan, you should come hang out the message boards, Panther-Lair.com. Like I said, we do our Saturday show. Our Panther-Lair post game starts an hour or two after the game ends, somewhere around there. Home games, I'm at Homefield, go to the post game press conference, do some things there, then drive all the way, drive home. It's not a long drive, but from the time I walk out of the press box until I walk into my house, it's a solid half hour, if not more. So, usually ends up being, I forget what time we started this past week. This Western Michigan one maybe started right around 6, 5:40, 5:45, somewhere around there for a noon game. So, kind of looking around that range. The road games, I watch it from home just like you, so we start up our post game right after the game ends. Sometimes we'll watch Pat Narduzzi's post game press conference and then jump right into it. So we go a little bit quicker there, but I'll try and keep you posted on Twitter about when we're going to start. But like I say, it's a lot of fun. We have a good time on those post-game shows, and I highly recommend you join us no matter what happens this Saturday against New Hampshire. I think we're going to have plenty to talk about. Got to give a shout-out, of course, to Homefield. Homefield apparel.com. They make great college sports t-shirts and sweatshirts and gear. I've got this pretty classic-looking rock here from Homefield. You can go check them out. It's really high quality stuff. And my sort of tagline, Homefield should take this from me. I'm surprised that they haven't. Is you can find lots of people make shirts with great designs on them. You know what I mean? I think Homefield makes awesome designs. They're not the only t-shirt company in the world that makes great designs, but what they do, they make great designs, and almost every design I've seen of theirs is a home run. And they put it on super soft, super comfortable shirts and sweatshirts. Now, I have a Hawaii Rainbow Warriors hoodie, and as the temperatures are starting to drop around here, I can't wait to start wearing it again because it's soft. I've washed that hoodie 10 times, a dozen times, something like that. And if you know hoodies, you wash them, what happens? They're lost. You know what I mean? You can only wash them so many times and they don't fit right anymore. The Homefield hoodie that I have, the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, that still fits and it looks sweet. So this is the picture that I've got on right now. And if you like Pitt, some of the Pitt designs you see there, go to Homefield.apparel.com, check out their Pitt collection, and use the promo code. If you're a first time buyer at Homefield, use the promo code LAIR, LAIR. You'll get 15% off your order. 15% off. You can't beat that. Great designs, high quality shirts, 15% off. You can't lose, right? You can't lose. This is really a situation you're walking into that you genuinely cannot lose. And I know a lot of people walked into the situation at Heinz Field on Saturday saying that Pitt could lose, worried that Pitt would lose, worried about the possibility of a Pitt loss. And I scoffed at it. I scoffed at it about the idea. Not that I thought it couldn't happen. I knew it could happen. Anything can happen in a football game. Anybody can lose. Anybody can win. And we've certainly seen plenty of instances over the years where this team has lost to non-Power 5 programs. I kind of wrote a thing on Sunday on Panther-Lair.com kind of about Pat Narduzzi joined the club, basically. Almost all of his predecessors, at least in this century, have had that game or games. Walt Harris had his Toledo game in addition to others. Dave Wanstead, which one do you want to pick for Dave Wanstead? Ohio? You want to pick Navy? You want to pick Bowling Green? Take your pick of Dave Wanstead's, bad non-Power 5 losses. Paul Christ had Akron. He had Navy. He had Youngstown State. He had SMU. He lost to Ole Miss. Todd Graham's team lost to SMU in the bowl game. I always get those BBVA Compass Bowls mixed up. I know Dave Wanstead's team without Dave Wanstead beat Kentucky. Todd Graham's team without Todd Graham lost to SMU. Paul Christ's team with Paul Christ lost to Ole Miss. However, Paul Christ's team without Paul Christ lost to Houston. All of Narduzzi's predecessors, save for Mike Haywood, in the 21st century, lost to a non-Power 5 team, and they have to wear that. That's a club. And Narduzzi had largely avoided it. Now, yeah, he had Navy and he had UCF, but the Navy team in 2015 in the Military Bowl, the UCF team in 2018 were far better than any of those teams we just mentioned. Even the Houston team in 2015, the Joe Rudolph-led Panthers lost to. UCF and Navy that Narduzzi lost to were much better than those teams. They were ranked. They were good teams, high-quality teams, top 15, top 10 teams. Western Michigan is not. Western Michigan is more along the lines of Bowling Green, is more along the lines of other Navies, 2007, 2013 Navies, more along the lines of 2013 Akron, or 2014 Akron, more along the lines of 2003 Toledo, more along the lines of 2005 Ohio. That's where Western Michigan is, and now Narduzzi has one of those losses. So there's enough precedent to know that there's a possibility of it happening. But I'm still not going to go into a game like that expecting it to happen. I walked into Heinz Field expecting Pitt to win. And for the vast majority of that game, I expected them to win. Even when they fell behind 20-7. I said, this isn't going to go on all game. Pitt's going to score. They're going to stop shooting themselves in the foot. And their defense is going to get it together. They're going to get their act together. Well, the offense did score. Points went up on the board. But the defense never really got its act together. And I thought if they could just get a stop or two in the second half, then Pitt would be able to take control of the game, and we'd come out of it not necessarily feeling great about the Panthers, and not necessarily feeling like, wow, they've really arrived, but at least they'd be 3-0, right? Now, of course, that didn't happen, and we've all spent the last 4 days trying to figure out why and what it means, and where we go from here. And let me say this, all right? On a lot of things, if you're the general Pitt fan right now who's looking at this and feeling pretty disgruntled, on a lot of levels, I see what you see. And I know what you know, and I've probably had similar reactions to some of the things that you've reacted to. Like you, I can look at the body of work of the last 6 years plus 3 games. I can look at the ups of that stretch. I can look at the downs of that stretch. I can look at where things went right and where things went wrong. And I can draw a general trend line that doesn't necessarily always point up. And I talked this past offseason, the offseason before that, about the concerning trend of bad losses. Of bad losses that really, I kind of I run the timeline back to 2018 with the Carolina game early in the season and the Stanford game in the bowl game. The loss to Stanford in the Sun Bowl. And I say those were 2 bad losses, worse than any losses Narduzzi suffered in his first 3 seasons. Even in 2017, I know they lost to North Carolina, but that wasn't a very good Pitt team. I don't know what you expected that Pitt team to accomplish, particularly at that point of the season. They were on a little bit of a roll. They beat Virginia and beat Duke. But then the Carolina curse just stuck with them. Now, I wasn't willing to chalk that up to the Carolina curse in 2018 because that was another bad Carolina team, but Pitt was better, and Pitt should have won that game. And there again, just to tie it all together, the defense let them down in that game too. It's like a 38-35 game. And the Stanford game was a bad loss. And those 2 losses, I think, were worse than anything they experienced the previous 3 years. And then you come forward to 2019. And this is something I've talked about before. And if you've listened to these podcasts, you read Panther-Lair.com, you kind of know what I'm talking about here and where I'm going with this. And you go to 2019, and they lose to Miami like 16-12. They lose to Boston College 26-19. Those 2 wins right there were bad losses. Those were bad losses. Again, worse than anything in the first 3 seasons. Were they worse than Carolina and Stanford in 2018? I don't know. I mean, you could go back and forth on that. I mean, I know Carolina didn't do very well that year where they win like 2 or 3 games. Stanford had like half a team and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, Miami and Boston College don't go to bowl games if they don't win those games. They don't go to bowl games. They don't get bowl eligible if they don't beat Pitt in those games. And so those were bad losses, right? Losses that turned Pitt from potentially 9-3 into 7-5. And then you go forward to 2020. Weird year, COVID year, everything's messed up. You give a lot of excuses. You accept a lot of wiggle room on what happened last season. But they shouldn't have lost to NC State, and they shouldn't have lost to Boston College. They should have been better than that. They should have been better than those teams by enough to beat them. And they didn't. And now what you see over the course of, if you look at Narduzzi's first 6 years, you see a split between 2017, everything up till 2017, and then everything since 2018. And what you see in that second half is coming into this season, 6 bad losses. Carolina and Stanford in 18, Miami and Boston College in 19, NC State and Boston College in 20. 6 games where they should have won, and they failed to do so. And so while Narduzzi had avoided the loss to a non-Power 5 program outside of, again, Central Florida and Navy, who I think you can make an exception for, he had this trend of bad losses happening in sort of the second half of those first 6 years, which is concerning. And now you come into year 7. And in the 3rd game of the season, he suffered arguably the worst loss of his time at Pitt. And you could make a case that some of those Carolina teams in 17 and 18 were worse than Western Michigan. And I wouldn't necessarily argue with you about that. But it's a non-Power 5 program. And it's not a non-Power 5 program that was ranked in the top 15 or the top 10. This is a non-Power 5 program that was unranked. A non-Power 5 program that got killed by a Power 5 program in week 1. And this was a bad loss. This was the worst loss of the Narduzzi era. And the fact that the worst loss of the Narduzzi era is happening in year 7, I have some concerns. Absolutely. I say all this because I think as we go through this show, as we talk on the message boards, I think sometimes it sounds like I might be defending things when oftentimes I'm just sort of arguing against sort of specific points. We had an incident. We had there was one discussion on the message board today on Wednesday, and somebody said a sort of classic refrain that I always sort of look forward to arguing against. Somebody said, "Oh, in 2018, Pitt backed into the Coastal Championship," and that's patently false. Patently, demonstrably false. It's just not accurate in any way. If you want to tell me that 2017 was a mediocre season because they went 7-7 and they lost to that Stanford game and they lost to that lost in that North Carolina game, all right, I'll buy that. But don't tell me they backed into the Coastal Championship. They won that outright. They went 6-2. They didn't win any tiebreakers, and they won 5 conference games in a row to clinch the Coastal. When they had the opportunity to take advantage and to really claim a legitimate championship of any kind, which this football program has never done since 1976, they did it. You know, they beat Syracuse in overtime. They went out to Notre Dame, played a tough one and lost. They beat Duke. They went to Virginia on a Friday night when Virginia was ranked and beat Virginia. They came back and thumped Virginia Tech by 30. And when they had the chance to go to Wake Forest and clinch the Coastal Championship, they did it. They did not back into that division title. But I say that, and then oftentimes there's a response of, you're just a homer, you're just defending this or that. Well, that's not the case. All right. All I'm trying to do is look it straight down the middle and say, what do we actually have here? What do you actually see in front of you? And so in that spirit, I can say, there are some concerning trends here. Now I say all of this is a long preamble. You can't spell preamble without ramble, right? I say all this as a long preamble to say that my thought right now, I'm not thinking beyond the final game of the season. I'm not thinking beyond this year. I'm thinking that right now Pitt has 9 more games to play. And I'm not going to go so far because I never go this far on anything. I'm not going to go so far as to say these next 9 games or potentially 10 games are going to determine Pat Narduzzi's long-term future at Pitt. I'm not going to say that. What I'm going to say is my thoughts and opinions on the viability of this current regime at Pitt I'm going to reserve them until we get through the next 9 games. Because that 2018 season, when they won the Coastal Championship, you know, pretty early in the year, they had a game they lost 51-6. You know, and it wasn't long after that when they had the game at Carolina that they lost 38-35 to a bad Carolina team. And then they got crushed by UCF. I think they were, 2-4, 2-3 to start that season? Is that right? 2-3, because they lost to Penn State, UCF. Oh, no. 2-2 to start that year. Now I'm drawing a blank on it. It doesn't matter. That's going to bug me. I'm trying to think of who else they lost to that year. Penn State, North Carolina, UCF, Notre Dame, and Miami. Okay. Anyway, it's beside the point. My point is there's 9 more games. Okay. I don't believe, and I could be proven wrong about this. I may end up, coming back a few weeks later and saying, boy, I got that one wrong. I don't believe their defense will be as bad and get exploited as much as it did against Western Michigan. I don't think there are a lot of, I don't think every team on Pitt's schedule is going to run RPOs as well as Western Michigan did. I think Pitt will prepare itself better for RPOs in the future when they play teams that'll use them. I think they'll have a better plan when they go against somebody like Sam Howell, a quarterback who can run. Sam Howell is the 5th leading rusher, North Carolina's quarterback. He's the 5th leading rusher in the ACC right now. He's got like 250 rushing yards this year. I think they'll have a better plan for it. I don't know if they'll necessarily stop Sam Howell, but I think they'll have a better plan for it. And I still like their chances in games against Georgia Tech, Virginia, Syracuse, Duke. Virginia Tech's going to be a huge game for this team. Carolina is going to be a huge game for this team. Miami is going to be a huge game for this team. Miami's struggling right now. Clemson's going to be a huge game for this team. Clemson's quarterback, and I don't mean to be, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, is what I'm saying. DJ has 1 touchdown pass through 3 games. They're still trying to figure out. Now, their defense is killing people. They're giving up like less than 1 point per drive or something absurd. I don't know if they've allowed any touchdowns yet or something like that, but their offense is not there yet. So I'll be interested to see. I think this team has a lot of football left to play. I think they have a lot of talent, and I think they have a lot of potential. The coaching staff's going to have to figure some things out, personnel-wise, scheme-wise, preparation-wise. But I think there's still a lot left to say about this team. Just like, and I said it before the Western Michigan game, people said, well, this game's going to tell us a lot about this team. No, this game is going to tell us about this game. Just like the Tennessee game told us about the Tennessee game. And the UMass game told us about the UMass game. And gradually they build the full story of the season, but right now we've got 3 chapters out of 12 or 13. There's a lot left to be said here. And if we get to the end of the year and, you look back, we'll have some verdicts, and we'll have opinions between now and then. Just see a lot of football left. All right, I want to jump into comments and questions here because I waited way too long to get going. Lots of people already in the chat. Got super chatters jumping in. We appreciate you guys supporting us. Of course, super chatters, if you want to support the podcast, make sure your comments and questions get read. We will definitely do that. RJCman38 jumps in as a super chatter right off the bat. 4th quarter point differential of +4, not getting the job done. Short fields, not being able to run. Slow starts, both halves are a constant issue. Offense is Achilles heel. I can't get there with you, man. I know you're on this, that the offense is the problem, but they scored 41 points. If you score 41, you should win. They've scored 40 or more in 5 out of the last 7 games. You should win. And one of those 2, dating back into last season, one of those 2 where they didn't score 40 was the Georgia Tech game where they won with 34. Since the Notre Dame game when they lost 45-3, they're averaging 38.9 points per game. I can't get on board with saying that the offense is the problem right now. Could they be better? Absolutely. Are you missing the forest for the trees? Yeah, you are. They lost the Western Michigan game because of defense. The offense could have bailed them out at the end, but the issue was the defense. This is like the NC State game last year. All right? Defense gives up the game-winning drive at the end, right? Issue was the defense. No, defense had a chance to win it, but the defense did not lose it. They lost that game to NC State because the offense wasn't good enough, which is a common theme. And it's amazing to me that we're sitting here after the last 3 seasons and we're talking about whether the offense isn't good enough. They're averaging 40 points a game this year, or more than 40 points a game. They're good enough. The offense is good enough. The offense is not the problem. Yes, you could have fewer 3-and-outs. Sorry, I wanted to find the exact stat. 44.3 points per game. Tied for 9th in the nation. You have a top 10 scoring offense. You can't tell me that the offense is the problem. I mean, you can if you want. And yes, they could have fewer 3-and-outs. They could run the ball better. They could hold on to the ball longer so the defense doesn't have to get on the field as much. But when you're not a top 10 scoring offense, I'm sorry, but you're not the reason that you're losing games right now. And they weren't the reason that they lost the Western Michigan game. They could have scored more touchdowns. Absolutely. They should have scored 60. I won't be happy until this offense scores 60. Brother, it wasn't that long ago. They were losing games, as I said, 16-12, 26-19. I mean, they need both sides to come together. They need both sides to play well at the same time. But right now, the problem is on defense. And the offense has plenty to work on. Don't get me wrong. The offense has plenty to work on. It's going to be really interesting to see this week what they do against New Hampshire. It's an FCS opponent, but I expect the offensive line to probably look different than it has due to a few different things. Curious to see how a new look offensive line might do, and if it might continue into that, once they jump into conference play coming up. Unknown Legend 57 says, hey, Chris, always love watching these podcasts through the first 3 games. What are your thoughts on the offensive line and the run game? I mean, it's terrible. Yeah, I mean, Alan Balomo says, run game, what run game? Exactly. I don't, there's no run game. I mean, it's completely is non-existent. It's not impactful. It hasn't really produced anything. They rank, I think, next to last in the ACC in rushing yards per game, and that's because they had 200 and some against UMass. That's skewing the stats. They haven't done anything in the last 2 games. They're not, Vincent Davis isn't getting it done. Izzy Abanikanda, for some reason, was, a distant second in the first 2 games. Well, they went through 6 running backs in the first game. They really just stuck to Davis and Abanikanda in the second game, and Abanikanda didn't really get that much work. He got 1 carry against Western Michigan. I'm thinking he was kind of limited, a little bit banged up, but he only got 1 carry. And if he was limited, why was he out there on the Pitt's final drive of the game? It didn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know if the issue is more the offensive line or the issue is more the running backs. My guess is that it's a combination of both, in addition to Mark Whipple. But until the run game does anything, I can't go into any game expecting it to do anything. I'm going to go into every game expecting Kenny Pickett, Jordan Addison, Lucas Krull to carry the load here, with Jared Wayne, Taysir Mack, Jalen Barton, Melky Stovall making plays in addition. I'm not counting on Vincent Davis, Izzy Abanikanda, Rodney Hammond, A.J. Davis, Todd Sibley, Daniel Carter, whoever you want to put out there. I'm not counting on those guys until they show that they can be counted on, and they haven't yet. And again, that's on them individually, and it's on the whole group. Will Z says it's both offense and defense, kind of a total team loss. I mean, yeah, there were things the offense could have done, but I can't get there in that game, man. They scored 41. Kenny Pickett threw six touchdown passes. I mean, Krull had 2 touchdown catches. Addison had 3. Offense was good enough. You score 41, you should win. Pat Narduzzi had never lost. He was 15-0 at Pitt when scoring 40-plus points. Saturday was the first time they ever lost under Narduzzi. S. Max says, keep the safeties back and just let the front 7 handle the short plays. The safeties fly up and miss tackles. Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of think part of the problem is, the safeties gave them too much space. It's so tricky with these RPOs that teams run because the linebackers don't know what they're reading, and quarterbacks that can run it well. Mason Rudolph at Oklahoma State comes to mind in 2017. The quarterbacks who can run it well, who can run that kind of an offense well, run an RPO offense well, they can make those reads quickly. And when the linebackers read run and step up to play run, that quarterback can pull the ball back and throw that quick slant. Just like he did to James Washington in 2017, just like they did with Sky Moore and Corey Crooms on Saturday. And it's hard to defend against that when you are so geared up to stop the run. And that's what this whole defense is based on, is stopping the run. And so when you're geared up toward that, that's your main focus. It's tough. You can be taken advantage of. And they were. They were taken advantage of on Saturday. Over and over and over and over again. Let's see here. Homer Simpson says, biggest takeaway from this game was the opposing coach saying that Pitt changed nothing. They knew exactly what we were going to do. Embarrassing. I can't disagree with that. I can't deny that. And it was. When I saw that quote, I just said, yeah, it looked like it. Right? Didn't it look like they knew exactly what they were going to do? And it didn't have anything to do with stealing signals. I know we get concerned, I know they get concerned in the South Side about stealing signals. There wasn't any signals being stolen. They just knew what you were going to do and took over. Let's see here. Homer Simpson says, if there's not major adjustments defensively over the next 2 weeks and no one gets fired, what are we doing here? There will be adjustments. I think they'll adjust the defense, particularly if they're going to go against a team that'll try and do the things that Western Michigan did. Nobody's going to get fired in the middle of the season. I don't think that's. I don't think there's really an advantage to that. And I don't think Pitt stands to gain anything by that. I think they got themselves into this mess. I think Narduzzi and Randy Bates got themselves into this mess, and they have to figure it out. And Ryan Manilak and Charlie Partridge and Corey Sanders and Archie Collins, they have to figure it out. Let's see here. 1-2 says PJ O'Brien transferring. Sully tweeted a suitcase. Yeah, PJ O'Brien tweets a lot. He does. He tweeted right after the game. He feels like he's working so hard for nothing. He tweeted over the summer that he can't wait to pick off Sam Howell. He tweets a lot, and I think a lot of those tweets end up getting deleted. I don't know about the suitcase tweet. I'm not even gonna. I was gonna scroll over to look at it. I'm not going to. But he tweets a lot. I don't know. Let's see here. Scroll down. Some comments. Eric Rogers says, Chris, I'm hearing there's zero chance the head coach gets fired after this year. Do you agree with those sentiments? I don't know about zero chance. I mean, there's always a non-zero chance of anything happening, right? And it might be a very, very small percentage chance. It might be a very large percentage chance. I think in this case, it's unlikely, but there's 9 games left to play, right? I think it would have to be, a disaster surpassing what we saw on Saturday. Because, I mean, as bad as Saturday was, it could always get worse over the next 9 games. I'm sort of sitting here saying that there's 9 games left and the possibility exists for it to get better, but it could always get worse over the next 9 games. If the disaster reaches epic proportions, perhaps the director of athletics will be inclined toward, action, move to action. I think it would cost a lot of money. I think there's a buyout to contend with. I think that it would have to be a pretty bad disaster for a change to be made. I think, barring anything really extreme, and I'm talking like losing record, 4 wins, 3 wins, something like that, I think Pat Narduzzi's probably your coach in 22. Dan Juby says, obviously the passing game and most of the offense has been a bright spot with 40-plus points every game, but when will Pitt stop the sideways passes? Seems to be negative yardage every time. Yeah, I mean, that's part of Mark Whipple's offense, those screen passes, swing passes, sideways passes. I'm not a big fan of them either. I do think that there are opportunities there. I think, I would have to go watch the film sort of anecdotally. I feel like I feel like defenders don't tend to. I feel like defenders give Pitt space, to sort of kind of to run with them, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because you've got guys who can stretch the field, and so I think they want to, they back off, maybe play some soft coverage to try to go downfield with Jordan Addison or Tayseer Mack or Jalen Barden, and so I think that gives you opportunities to maybe get some of those screen passes. I think you need to use them when you have the right look. You know what I mean? When the defense shows you the right thing. And I think they've got playmaker. I mean, I think Jalen Barton can take a screen pass pretty far. You know what I mean? I think Shockey Jacques Louis can do it. I think Jordan Addison can do it. I think Melky Stovall might have the ability to do it. You've got some receivers with some speed who should be able to make those plays on the outside. They obviously haven't hit yet. But, I mean, I think the potential is there. I think you work it a couple times a game, partially to keep the defense honest, and then if you catch them in the right look, playing the right coverage, or the defender slips or something, then you got a chance for a really big play. Peter Berlin, hey, Chris, do you think Vincent Davis was distracted by Michael K. Williams' death? Pretty sure Vince played Snoop on The Wire, so they were probably close. Yeah, there's always been a weird resemblance between Vincent Davis and the actress who played Snoop on the show The Wire. If you don't know The Wire, then you have no idea what that reference is. But Michael K. Williams, who played a pretty iconic character in Omar, passed away last week. And, I don't think that has anything to do with it. But it's a funny comment, though. Appreciate you bringing that up. Alan Balomo says, why didn't the coaches make better adjustments? Western Michigan wasn't doing anything new each possession. That's $1 million question. The only thing I can think as an answer, and it's not a good answer, is that there was only so much you could prepare for. And there's only you're limited in how far you can go with adjustments. You can't overhaul the game plan that you worked on all week. You can make adjustments to it, but I have to think that a lot of those adjustments are sort of built into what you did all week. And that makes it tricky. I think that limits you in how drastically you're able to adjust. But, that's... that's an indictment too, because that means that they weren't really that well prepared for those plays. And that's I've tried to figure it out too. I've tried to figure out why couldn't you adjust to this better? And that's kind of the best I can come up with. SMAC points out the refrain of we'll have to go back and look at the tape. Here's the thing. Actually, this is a good opportunity to talk about this. I appreciate you bringing that up, SMAC. Pat Narduzzi often says that after a game. We'll have to look at the tape. We'll have to look at the tape. We'll have to look at the tape. I think, and he takes some guff about that. There's jokes made about that. I think football coaches are pretty good at walking off the field and knowing what they saw. You know what I mean? I think it's very rare that they watch the tape and they're surprised by something that they see. I think they know what happened. I think they know who got beat. I think they know who ran the wrong route. I think they know who blew their block. I think they know who ran the right assignment. You know what I mean? Good and bad. They know why plays happen. I don't think Pat Narduzzi really needs to go watch the tape to find those answers. But the conclusion I've come to, so we're now 7 years into this adventure, is that right after the game, look, if you got Pat Narduzzi up on stage, up at the podium right after the game, and you say, what happened on this play, or why were they able to hit these plays? Well, and the reality is, your true answer from him could be our field safeties weren't playing it well, and our linebackers lost leverage. And, when this linebacker does this, that's going to leave him open to run at our free safety who's not fast enough to handle it. But he doesn't want to say any of those things. He doesn't want to call his players out like that. He doesn't want to throw his players under the bus. So, but he's not really in the state of mind to have kind of a diplomatic way of addressing some of these questions that we ask after the games. And so some of the things he just sort of defaults to, we'll have to look at the tape. He was asked what he did to draw an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Remember that? Remember he got that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty? And it was pretty clear. I mean, it was at the end of the drive where Kenny Pickett got kicked in the head during a slide. Inadvertently, I thought. But if you're going to protect the quarterbacks, you got to protect them. And he was, in the ear of the officials and all this stuff. And he gets an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty after they score a touchdown. After the extra point, he gets the penalty. And he was asked about what did you get that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for? And he said he didn't remember. He couldn't remember. And I think right in that moment, he was drawing a blank. And he actually said, we'll have to go back and look at the tape. And then a minute later, I think Jerry DiPaolo, our good friend at the Tribune Review, followed up that question and said, was it because of Kenny getting kicked in the head? And Narduzzi said, yeah, that's it. That's what it was, actually. I was angry about that, and that's why I got the penalty. We'll have to go look at the tape is sort of this default, just almost kind of like fallback. You know what I mean? That he's just sort of, when he's not, when he can't really say what he's really thinking, he just sort of falls on that. We'll look at the tape. And it is funny, though, because you hear it a lot. Brock Madonic says, breaking some basketball news. Daniel Skillings will announce his decision tomorrow. Yeah, I started getting some text messages about this as we were sitting here. Daniel Skillings, 4-star shooting guard at Roman Catholic in Philadelphia. He's a top 25 guard in the country, pretty close to a top 100 prospect. Is announcing his commitment. He took an official visit to Pitt. When was he here? A week ago? 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. And he's going to announce his commitment. It seems like there's a lot of momentum for Cincinnati. It seems like where that's probably headed. That would, I guess that would be my guess. I don't think it's going to be Pitt. He visited NC State last weekend, so possible for the Wolfpack, but Cincinnati's kind of my guess on this one but we'll see. We'll find out, I guess, tomorrow. Hobie Webster says, since this appears to be the same old Pitt, doesn't that mean we're a virtual lock to beat Clemson? Charge the super weapon? Yeah, possibly. Although this Clemson team seems to have a little bit of flaws. I think, they knocked off a Miami team that pretty clearly had some flaws. So I was going to say that, typically they do it like the West Virginia team in 2007 or Clemson in 2016 that looks like a, impenetrable fortress of a team that you just have no way of beating. Whereas Miami, I think, particularly in retrospect, it was pretty clear. I think it was pretty clear in retrospect that Miami was ripe for the picking in 2017. This Clemson team looks like it has some issues, particularly on offense, which is where that Miami team in 2017 had problems too. So I don't know if this is a good one for the Pitt super weapon, but we'll see. We'll see. Royce Beacom says, errors have been identified by players and staff by the defense, but no commitments to make schematic changes, which were identified as existing for 6 years by the head coach of Western Michigan. They're not going to come out and say we're changing our whole defense. They're not going to change their whole defense. And even if they were, they wouldn't come out and say it. They're just going to have to adjust how they play against those types of offenses. And you have to assume that other teams are going to do it too. You have to assume that other teams are going to try to run those offenses too and run those RPOs. And here's the thing I would say. Look, Pitt has gotten killed by RPOs for a while. Like I mentioned, that 2017 Oklahoma State game. That was they got RPO'd to death, and that wasn't the only time that it happened. I feel like there was a fair amount of that in the 2018 Central Florida game. I could be wrong about that. They really hate it when they call it Central Florida, by the way, so I often say that as much as I can. But they have adjusted, and they've been able to defend teams. Now, a lot of that, and probably as we've talked so much about the safeties, and we talk a lot about the linebackers, Pitt's defensive line needs to do a better job too. Pitt's defensive line, outside of Haba Baldonado and Kalijah Kancey, and to a lesser extent Keyshawn Camp, has been leaving a lot to be desired. They've got to produce more. They've got to get more pressure on the quarterback. They've got to get into the backfield more. And they haven't been doing it enough to be successful. And that, if you could get more pressure out of the ends and get more, really kind of hold the middle with the tackles, you have a lot more success. But that's that's another part of the issue too. In addition to some schematic things that they need to do, some adjustments that they need to do. Jeff Meyer says, with the loss to Western Michigan, I think for the first time Narduzzi is actually feeling the heat. That being said, do you think he finally makes some big changes on defense? No, I don't think he makes some big changes on defense. I think you'll see personnel things. I think they'll move around and try some different things. I'll tell you something to watch, and I'm actually going to ask Pat Narduzzi about this on Thursday because it's something I'm curious about. In the past 6 years, literally, they've used their third down package. Their third down defensive package is called the Delta package. And people often say, oh, Pitt, they only run their base defense. Well, they don't. They have this third down package. And what they do, they go 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. So they pull a defensive lineman off the field and they bring out an extra safety. And there were different guys who did this. Dennis Briggs did it for a few years early on. Eric Hallett did it the last couple years. And this has been their third down package. And it's been, particularly the last couple years, it's been pretty effective for them. They've been able to mix up their blitzes a lot. You have 6 guys all around the line of scrimmage, these 3 linebackers and 3 defensive linemen, and they all look like they're going to rush, and sometimes 5 rush, sometimes 6 rush, sometimes 3 rush, sometimes 2 rush. It's all over the place, and it's been a really effective defensive sub package to try to get to the quarterback. They've also at times, mostly against Syracuse, used the nickel, sort of a true traditional nickel with 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and 5 DBs, where the extra DB is a corner. But for the most part, their third down defensive package has been that Delta package. It's a 3-3-5. 3 linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 DBs, with the extra DB a safety. This year, through 3 games, it's changed. 3 down linemen, 4 linebackers and 4 DBs. And instead of an extra safety, they brought in, mostly it's been John Patrician. And I'm going to ask Pat Narduzzi about this because I'm curious if it's sort of an intentional change to try and go with as almost a 3-4 look with 3 down linemen and 4 linebackers. If it's just about the fact that Patrician used to play safety. He's a converted safety who's added weight on his vegan diet, which I give a lot of props to, by the way. I wish I could eat that. I wish I had the willpower to eat that way too. But if he's added weight, but he is a former safety, so maybe that's kind of what's behind it. I'm not sure what it is. I don't feel like that package has been as effective this year. That might just be my perception. That might be anecdotally. I don't know. I feel like that package has been better in the past and not as good this year. I don't know if that's about having a linebacker instead of a safety, but it seems to me you've got Eric Hallett and Brandon Hill, and then you've got a number of guys you could bring in there. You know what I mean? You could bring in another safety. You could bring in Rashad Battle, who's played a decent amount at field safety this year. You could bring in another corner. You could bring in, you could slide like Damari Mathis into that spot and bring in A.J. Woods or M.J. Devonshire out there. I think you've got options to get another DB on the field, and I think that would probably be in your best interest. Although, what do I know? I'm not a coach. But that's something I'm going to be interested to see. If they stick with that all year, that sort of 3-4 alignment, or if they switch it up and go 3-3-5. Which they've done in the past. We'll see. Hail to Pitt says, 1, Izzy needs to play. 2, Gonsalves and Zubovic should be playing. 3, Narduzzi needs to make changes to his defense. 4, defensive line needs to create more pressure. All right, number 1, Izzy needs to play. I mean, unless you're brand new to this podcast, you know where I stand on that. I think he's the best back on the team. I think he's got the highest ceiling on the team, best collection of tools on the team. I don't know. We'll see. 2, Gonsalves and Zubovic should be playing. It's interesting. I mean, like if you look over the first 2.5 weeks, where the weaknesses were, I don't know. I think center was an issue with Owen Drexel. But I think the guards, Cradle and Minor, were both pretty good. I think Carter Warren has been pretty solid. I think Gabe Hoy has had his moments. I think he's been okay. Now, obviously, they haven't run the ball very well, so it's hard to sit here and praise the offensive line too much. But I think they ran into a problem on Saturday where Owen Drexel somehow apparently got hurt, is what it seems like. And it just so happened to coincide with when he had his second bad snap of the game. Turned into a turnover, or it turned into a fumble. This one they actually lost. And it just so happened that he came out at that point, and then on the next drive, Jake Cradle took over at center for the rest of the game. Now, the issue was Keldrick Wilson went in at right guard, and he didn't play well. I think he gave up the sack on the 4th down play at the end of the game, and he didn't play well. He struggled. I think part of the problem was, he was one of the backups. I don't know if Blake Zubovic was available. Somebody said they didn't see him on the sideline. I didn't really notice him. He obviously didn't go in, so they were a little bit limited maybe on their backup guards that they could play. The thing is, Gabe Hoy and Matt Gonsalves have both played guard in the past. And I asked Pat Narduzzi that on Monday. I said, can those guys still play guard? And it was one of his quickest, most succinct answers ever. He said yes. And I think that's probably something we're gonna keep an eye out for on Saturday. And if I had to bet, I would say that's probably something we're going to see on Saturday, is one of those guys playing guard. My guess is what we will see. If Owen Drexel really came out of that game because he was hurt, then I'm going to guess that we'll see Jake Cradle playing center. And then we'll see some combination of Hoy and Gonsalves on the right side. Maybe Hoy playing inside. He's played a fair amount in games at guard. And then Gonsalves outside at right tackle, I would think. Hail to Pitt, number 3 statement is Narduzzi needs to make changes to his defense. We'll see, but I think it ties into your number 4 statement, which is the defensive line needs to create more pressure. I think both of those things are true. You know what I mean? I think those two things work together. I don't think it's a coincidence that 2018, 2019, 2020, Pitt's defense kept getting better and played at a pretty high level for most of those games in those seasons, with the defensive line really excelling and creating a lot of pressure and getting a lot of sacks. It's not a coincidence that Pitt's best defenses under Narduzzi were the defenses that led the nation in sacks or were in the top of the conference in sacks. That's a 1-to-1 correlation. And it's not happening this year. I forget where they rank. I think they do rank fairly high. Let me see. I've got all the stats here right in front of me. Team sacks. They rank 6th actually in the nation in team sacks, but I think that's a little bit skewed. I think they only had 2 or maybe 3 against Western Michigan. They're not getting the kind of pressure that they need to get on the quarterback, so that's a big part of it. Will Z says, if Pitt loses in New Hampshire, I'm nosediving off the cathedral. I mean, just be careful with that, man. Weird things happen. I remember a few years ago there was this 4-star running back from Florida who claimed he wanted to visit every school. He would always be in interviews talking about how he wanted to visit this school, wanted to visit that school. And one of these, one Pitt fan, who was always very well measured in his comments said, if that kid ever visits Pitt, I'll run down Forbes Avenue naked. Well, the recruit visited Pitt. I don't know if the guy ever ran down Forbes Avenue naked, but the recruit did visit Pitt. So you never know what's going to come. Let's see here. Byron Fleck jumps in with a comment, says, firing a coach in the portal era is a disaster. See Florida State, Miami, Nebraska, Tennessee. I'm neutral on Pat Narduzzi, but firing him sets the program back 3 to 5 years based on the experience of the program. That's interesting. It's interesting because you're right. I mean, I think when you change coaches, you run the risk of losing a significant portion of your roster. Now, there's always going to be roster turnover and transition during those transition periods. You know what I mean? Guys leave. It's kind of typical. I think what it comes down to is you get to the end of the season and you ask yourself the questions that you always ask yourself. If you're the people in charge of making this decision, you get to the end of the season, you ask yourself, what's our ceiling here? What do we think it should be? How close are we to it? And how close do we think the current leadership will get us to it? And, I think what happens over the next 9 games will go a long way in answering some of those questions. And, I don't know what those next nine games are going to bring, Let's see here. Dylan Fishbane, you jumped in as a super chatter, so you don't have a question. I forget if I already shouted you out, but thanks, man. I appreciate you giving us giving a little support to the podcast, for sure. Alan Balomo says, I don't think they should fire him, however, this loss should not have happened. Excuses are not acceptable. I don't think there's one person that would tell you this loss should have happened. I think at Pitt, Pat Narduzzi would tell you this loss was unacceptable, that they should never have lost this game. And I think he's absolutely right. Will Z says, I think Randy Bates should be on thin ice. I think there's some truth to that. No, I won't say that. I won't go that far. Talk to me in 3 or 4 games. You know what I mean? Talk to me when we're 6 games into this season, and we'll see if the defense has turned it around a little bit. That'll tell us more about what lost all the comments here. Well, that'll tell us more about that defense and what's happening there. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time says, am I crazy, or is A.J. Davis no longer on the team? And if so, why is he not playing if he is on the team? I think A.J. Davis has been hurt. I think that's why you haven't seen him in the last couple of games. I don't even think he dressed. I forget if I think he made the trip to Tennessee, but he wasn't in uniform for the Western Michigan game. So he's hurt. That's what's going on. RJC Man 38 keeps going on about the offense in the second half. I'm sorry. He says 14 points second half. Stop it. That's not getting the job done. Yeah, but 41 points in the game is getting the job done. So that's what needs to happen. Blackman614 says number 31 is who we thought he was. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Look, the field safeties, the free safeties, they had a rough game. When you look at the stats on Pro Football Focus, I put the numbers up on Panther-Lair.com. That's where the bulk of, Sky Moore and Corey Kroom's bulk of their production came against Eric Hallett and Rashad Battle. We've seen good Pitt safeties get abused against those kinds of offenses. And it makes me think it's more about the scheme and about what the linebackers are doing than just the talent of the defensive, the safeties. So Hallett, I think Hallett can be a good player. I think he can be solid. That was bad. It was a bad game though for a lot of guys. Alan Balomo says, where was Shockey Jacques Louis on Saturday? I don't think he had a catch. Yeah, I don't think he did. They were kind of caught up with Jared Wayne getting like 40-some yards after the catch, and Jordan Addison catching 3 touchdowns, and Jalen Barden having a huge touchdown, and Lucas Krull catching 2 touchdowns. Look, there's only so many balls to go around, even in a high-volume passing offense like this one. And I like Shockey Jacques Louis a lot. I think they should get him the ball. I think he can make plays. But if you look at that game on Saturday, who are you taking targets away from? Are you not throwing it to Jordan Addison? I think he only had about 7 targets. Jared Wayne was sort of the same thing. I know he's not quite as explosive as those other guys, but he leads the team in yards after the catch. He gets the ball and he breaks tackles. He had, I think, according to Pro Football Focus, Jared Wayne forced 5 missed tackles in that Western Michigan game. Nobody else on the team, receiver or running back, forced more than 1. Maybe Kenny Pickett might have forced like 2. So I think, I think there's, I think he can make plays, but I think they've got some really good receiving options on this team. Tyler Buchanan says, am I one of the only people on here that thinks Pitt football still has all their goals in front of them? Yes, the loss sucks, but they still can win the Coastal and play in the ACC Championship. It's a 12-game season. A lot can happen. Let's evaluate this season once it is complete. That's what I like to do. I'm with you, Tyler, and you're right. It was funny on the Kenny Pickett show this week, and I didn't even shout that out. If you haven't been checking out the Kenny Pickett show every week, you really should. It's on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You should check out the Kenny Pickett show. It's interesting and it's exclusive. I mean, Kenny didn't talk to the general Pittsburgh media this week. I think he had a spot on the Fan, brief little thing they do on Wednesday afternoons, but we get like 15, 16, 17, 18 minutes of exclusive interviews with Pitt's quarterback every week. And this one we finally had to talk after a loss. And there was a question. We take questions from the readers on Panther-Lair.com, and I'll pick a few questions each week and ask Kenny. And there was a question of, some about, how's the emotional swings a week ago? You beat an SEC team and seemed like a potential ACC champ or ACC Coastal champ, and now this and that. And as I asked Kenny that question, he said, I heard you say potential, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't an ACC game on Saturday. All the goals are still in front of you. Tyler's right. If the goal is to win the Coastal, that goal is still out there. Now, that doesn't excuse losing to Western Michigan. It doesn't make it okay to lose to Western Michigan. But there's still plenty that this team can accomplish. I think losing to Western Michigan shoots down some of your confidence that they can accomplish those things, but there's still plenty that they can accomplish. So, there's plenty of time to go. There's plenty of time to go. And I think when you watch that North Carolina-Virginia game on Saturday night, I know a lot of people were watching Penn State-Auburn. I was kind of flipping between the two. But, I mean, you watch the North Carolina-Virginia game on Saturday night, I think Pitt can score some points on both of those defenses. Carolina scored 59 against Virginia, and Virginia's quarterback threw for 554 yards against Carolina. So, I mean, it's going to be a challenge to stop Sam Howell. It's going to be a challenge to stop Brennan Armstrong, the Virginia quarterback. But those defenses can be had. And right now, with the way Pitt's offense is playing, they can go in and, maybe get into a shootout with one of those teams. And maybe have a good chance of coming out on top. All right, get a couple more here. Scroll down, see... A lot of comments here. Everybody jumping in, and let's see if there's anything else here we want to get to before we bounce out here. All right, I think we got just about everything. Oh, we got a Western Michigan fan, Nicholas Sikenga. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining us. He says, as a Western Michigan fan, yes, we won, but we have a very underrated offense. Caleb Ellaby will be an NFL quarterback. Pitt's offense is really good. I really hope y'all win the ACC. Hey, nice to see you. How about that? I think that's a good spot, to have. It's a good spot to go out on here, to have a Western Michigan fan jump in and drop a hello. Good to hear from you. And I think that's a good place to end. Like I said, of course, on Saturday after the game, the New Hampshire game, we'll have a live stream Panther-Lair post-game show. Probably I'm starting around 5:45 or 6 o'clock, somewhere around there. Somewhere between 5:30 and 6. I'll tweet out a time, and we'll make sure you know about it. But we'll jump in and we'll have a beer. Definitely have a beer on Saturdays after the game. We'll jump in and have some post-game conversation, talk about what we saw at the game. Earlier in the day, Saturday morning, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., we've got the Panthers Insider Show on 93.7 The Fan. So you want to get a little Pitt sports talk, you can tune in for that. That's me for an hour on The Fan Saturday morning. So we'll get you ready for the game there, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. The Kenny Pickett Show comes out every Wednesday at 10 a.m., so make sure you check that out. We've got this show every Wednesday night, 8:30 to 8:30 to however long we go, as we talk about Pitt sports here on the Panther-Lair Show. And listen, if you're on the live stream, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You can't post comments if you don't subscribe. And you also, if you make sure your notifications are turned on, you'll get a notification whenever we go live. So on Saturday, you're wondering, when are you going to start? When's the post-game show? When's it going to go? Well, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on notifications, and make sure your phone will buzz, and you'll know that we're starting. Homefield, check them out. Got the Sweet Rock shirt. Promo code LAIR, get you 15% off. Homefield apparel.com, some of the best college sports shirts you're going to find. Pitt and tons of other schools. You don't even have to buy Pitt stuff if you don't want to, but I recommend it because it's pretty sweet. Homefieldapparel.com, promo code LAIR, LAIR. Thanks for everybody jumping in on the live stream tonight. It's a lot of fun. I appreciate it. We had another fun. This hour flies by, I tell you. It really does. But had a lot of fun. Thanks to everybody who listens to the podcast during the week. Make sure you read Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com. That'll keep you posted on everything going on in Pitt sports. And, have a good rest of the week. We'll talk to you on Saturday after the game.